Hi there, Vasco Duarte here, your host. I wanted to share a story with you. You know how sometimes Agile just feels like following another checklist? When processes and frameworks feel more important than what we are trying to achieve, and sometimes even like handcuffs. I was talking to a customer of the Global Agile Summit, and he used a term that I kind of stuck in my mind. He said, "I have agile fatigue." And I've heard that a lot from people since then. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be this way. So we started thinking, and at the Global Agile Summit, which is happening this May, we're bringing together practitioners who've actually done that, who've broken free from this, install the framework kind of mindset. We want to focus the summit on real-life, first-person stories of Agile succeeding that inspire you to action. We're talking real experiences, practical solutions, and of course, amazing insights from leaders like Gojko Adzic, who will be one of the keynote speakers, and Jürgen Apelo, who will be one of the keynote speakers as well. If you're ready to leave the Agile fatigue behind, just join us in Tallinn. The early bird tickets are now available at the globalagilesummit.com. And mark your calendars. We will have workshops on May 18th, that's a Sunday. And then the conference itself will happen on May 19th and 20th of 2025 in Tallinn, Estonia. So let's make Agile exciting again. And remember, go to globalagilesummit.com, that is, and get your early bird ticket now. It will only be available until early March, so grab it now. And now, on to the episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to one more week of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. And this week, joining us from Poland is Mateusz Komander. Hey, Mateusz, welcome to the show.
Hello, Vasco. Nice seeing you.
And Mateusz has, of course, the right name for a Scrum Master, Komander.
I don't know. I don't know, but yeah, it's very impactful for many people, and I do fall in mind with that surname, definitely.
Absolutely. I bet you tell a lot of jokes about the name when you introduce yourself as a Scrum Master. So, Mateusz is a Scrum Master at Heineken. He brings expertise from biotech and the airline industries, excelling in agile delivery and transformations. He's also skilled in Management 3.0, and he fosters self-managed, innovative teams. And Mateusz just launched a podcast on organizational transformation, so check out the show notes to get the direct link. And Mateusz highlights how understanding team dynamics beyond Scrum really helps with collaboration and effectiveness. And that's what we are going to talk about the whole of this week. So, Mateusz, let's dive right in. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and how did you end up becoming a Scrum Master?
Hi, Vasco. Thank you for the question. And from my perspective, it's a quite interesting story, as probably as many of our colleagues, Scrum Masters. I not necessarily started directly in IT. So in my past career, I was an insurance broker and risk manager, actually, already started while I was studying law. So that's a nice background for me, which actually in my work of Scrum Master navigates me a little bit closer towards quite often negotiating instead of maybe inspiring. So that's a place to improve. And throughout my career, I was working with various companies, and one of those companies I was supporting in consultancy around their insurance and around risk management in their company was actually a development company, which was providing or developing new solution for one of the biggest banks in Poland that allowed the clients to, let's say, start or register their own company throughout the banking system. And as it happens, I was living quite close to the headquarters of the bank, and the client asked me, "Hey, Mati, we actually need a project manager for meeting with our client, for meeting with the company. We cannot be there every day, and they require one of our representatives to be there on a daily basis. So would you be willing to join them and be our, let's say, eyes and ears in your company to support our development? And for me, it was new. I never ever ran a project management around IT product. So I decided, yeah, why not? And this was actually the first time when I've met Scrum Masters, and I saw in that banking industry, I saw Scrum teams, and I loved speaking and working with the Scrum Masters back there. So as it happened, I actually am a little bit more a people person than a process person or back office person. I decided to, while I was working within implementing that specific product, I decided to kick off with my first Scrum Master training and take the opportunity of being maybe a little bit mentor or led by more experienced colleagues. And thankfully, shortly after my first course and the experience I've got within the bank, I was able to catch up work with one of the body leasing company that actually straight on put me on a big screen within biotech industry. So
So,
quite
one of the interesting things of this background is that, of course, you bring a lot of different perspectives into the Scrum Master role. Some of those quite familiar to our listeners, for example, project management, but perhaps some others quite different from what others might have been, especially if you were doing insurance brokerage and risk as a law student. So that's quite a different perspective. So I'm quite curious to hear about your difficult moment as a Scrum Master. So Mateusz, share with us that difficult moment you had as a Scrum Master. Tell us the story. We'll dive into the details and the takeaways later, but share that story with us.
well, and actually the big stage that I mentioned previously is actually the stage that I was straight on put in. So I've started with at the beginning with one team in that biotech company, and I have thought that shortly after the training and shortly after my exam with my past experience, I thought I could do better. So I've started working with a team, and it was quite small team. It was around 5 people. In it, but I didn't quite understood then why Scrum is designed as is. So why we have the events as we have, why we have planning retrospectives. So many things I wasn't trying to investigate as much as I could. I jumped on Kanban, I jumped on many different approach, and I thought that maybe we can mix and match then, and all of that will work.
So what you're saying is that you knew Scrum, you knew how it was, what were its components, but you didn't know why those components were there. So you started bringing in all kinds of other things into Scrum. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, a little bit based on, I thought then feedback from the team, and I thought that this may be a good part. But my biggest learning point end of this, which I wanted to lead to, is actually my path into understanding the importance of retrospectives. Because while I was keeping like dailies from time to time with the team, like how I was skipping planning sessions, I also wasn't introducing retrospective or wasn't introducing it the right way. And I think at some point it was actually requested by one of the proxy product owners back then. He asked me to actually schedule that session, schedule that retrospective, because he saw that the things are not working correctly. So I've organized that session, and oh my God, all hell gates were opened for me. So all of the unmanaged conflicts, all of the unmanaged issues previously surfaced during this one session. And at that time, I thought, when all of that stuff showed up, I thought it's unmanageable by me. It was a long path, but on one hand, for me, start introducing the retrospective the right way, to focus on processes, to focus on improvement, not on blame across our colleagues within a team. But yeah, that first part was very eye-opening, and this actually showed me. And I took a step back, and I took a step back into the Scrum Guide, and I reached out to my mentor back then, who was mentoring me around about that framework. And with that help, I understood why we are introducing specific items and how we should interact. And this also showed me how important the role of Scrum Master as a coach, as a actual people person, is important for a team to be able to manage all of the tensions. Maybe not manage, but to be able to support the team and be able to respond to the tensions that are within a team.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things that I want to highlight is that you reached out to a mentor. And I think that all of us who are starting this journey, whether it is as a Scrum Master like you were, or as an Agile coach, or as an engineering manager, or as a product owner, it's really important to have someone who's there for us, who's on our side and helping us to succeed in that role. Because alone in this kind of role where there's so much at stake can be very difficult, and of course a lonely experience filled with doubts and questions that we can't necessarily answer. So I'm really happy to hear that you reached out to a mentor. But what were the things, like when you think about that journey and that understanding why Scrum is as it is, what were the things at that time that touched you, that made you understand, okay, I was really missing this?
Well, mostly I think when I took a step back and I understood that the Scrum is, as a framework, is not really about the process itself. It's rather facilitating of the importance of the connection, of the interactions with individuals. So it allows us to touch base with the team as often as possible, to observe and to support them. And I believe this is what we should be able to pick up from the Scrum itself. And for me, who came from a process-heavy approach at the beginning, that was the main challenge, I believe, to understand and to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things that I remember reading way back when, it wasn't even the Scrum Guide, it was Agile Software Development with Scrum, which was, I think, 2004 when I read it for the first time. One of the things that really touched me was the emphasis on empirical management. It's still a big emphasis in Scrum, even though people don't talk about it. But the idea was, and they use this metaphor, right? Like they say, when you have a chemical process, and because you have some biotech experience, you probably are familiar with this. When you have a chemical process, you can't plan it in advance, and you add a certain amount of catalyst or whatever to create a chemical reaction, but then you need to manage that with pressure and temperature and whatever as the process is happening to make sure that the output is what you want it to be. And Scrum has, or Agile Software Development with Scrum, the book really has that specific story in there where it talks about the need to be empirical, the need to be constantly looking into what is happening and constantly adapting, right? The inspect and adapt message that Scrum talks about and Agile talks about all the time. So for me, that was the biggest contrast. And when I put that together with what you just said, which is like this people and interactions, that is more than anything an empirical process, because the relationship between people is changing every single day, right?
Exactly. And what we are looking, we need to remember that the inspect and adapt and the interactions and adaptation actually within Scrum happens on a daily basis. So what we quite often can see is that even throughout the sprint, some priorities might change, some scope may change even. We may need to deprioritize item because something we've learned that we need to focus on to be able to achieve the sprint goal. So that's definitely a learning point to take.
Yeah, and we need to make this practical. And more on that in the rest of the week, because Mateusz will be here for the whole week. Mateusz, thank you for sharing that story with us.
Thank you very much, Vasco. And it was very nice being today with you.
We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.